Sorry, I meant like starting in the center and like both crews working away. So then, I don't know, the pump truck.
I think it was, I was talking to my project engineer and he was saying that to kind of confirm quantities, because if you start at those ends and you work towards the middle, you just have a square that's left out. Really easy to go take field measurements, be like, okay, we have this much more concrete we have left coming, is this going to be enough to fill this area? If you start from the middle and go out, like we said, if they get off of symmetrical, I guess, then you're taking measurements of one semicircle plus a little rectangle, and then measurements from another semicircle. It was just the easiest way to make sure that we had enough concrete and we could see it. We didn't, which we ended up not. I think we ended up originally only ordering 1,200 yards of concrete for this. So then once we started getting good measurements on that rectangle in the middle, we realized we were way off, but we saw it way in advance that it really didn't impede installation or anything like that. So, yeah. Anybody else?
Good job.
Go.
You gotta go. Do you need a parking pass?
They almost made it good.
Connor, you're up.
Oh, it was.
Who's what?
Someone else.
He's up. He dropped the cross. So then we got Myrna and then Josh. Is that right?
I can just go next time.
Well, you might have to if Brad is long-winded. Is he after Myrna?
Yeah.
Myrna was hoping that she would get bumped. But that would just delay the agony, Myrna. All right, here we go.
Alright, hi everyone, my name is Connor, and everybody, Josh. My name is Connor, and today I'm going to be talking about my summer 2017 internship. However, before we jump into that, I'm going to just briefly summarize my 2016 internship. So 2016, I actually worked on 3 separate projects, still with the same company, Mac Construction. I worked at the Television Academy in North Hollywood, Los Angeles, and then I worked on 2 jobs for USC. All 3 of the jobs were in the closeout stage of the project. There wasn't really a whole lot of construction going on. I never wore work boots to the project, and didn't even have to wear a hard hat for 2 of those projects. So that was a very interesting contrast to this internship where there was dirt on the site, everything was dirty, it was loud, and there's a lot of construction going on, and a lot of safety hazards all over the place. So that was awesome for me to be able to work in both environments and see how different they were. So a brief project overview for this project. It was about $60 million total budget for the whole thing. However, there's a bunch of phases, which we'll get to in the next slide. It was based out of Los Angeles, California, actually in West Hollywood, so near where I was the first summer. It's a very long project, so part of building a school that is really difficult to work around is you can't just stop the school. Kids are going here, people are paying tuition, and parents don't want to just pull their kids out of school to send them to, you know, some Los Angeles not very good public school, especially with the clients, you know, the parents that are sending their kids to this private school, which we'll get to later. So while I was working over the summer, we were focusing mainly on package 1C, mainly. However, we also worked on package 0 and package 2. We'll get to what both of those included also in the next slide. So the TCO for package 1C is scheduled for the end of this year, December 15th. And at that point, we're going to close up package 1C and start with package 3, which is a new thing, not package 2. So over the summer, however, we were able to do some of the concurrent phase work, which is where you see 0 and 2. Oh, I guess it didn't say package 0 and 2. We were also doing alongside 1C for part of the summer. So, sorry. that's one of the challenges we had as far as logistics goes, was working around the parents and the children. A lot of them were really sensitive to the construction. Construction is a very abrasive kind of process. So you have kids, you know, we're talking 2, 3, 4 years old who are already going to the school all the way up to 12 years old. So some of these kids and toddlers, you know, are going to be sensitive to a lot of this dust, welding gases and fumes, and noise during hours. So here's the scope of our project, all the packages. It was split up into phases, which represent the numbers, and then narrowed down into certain packages. So it goes, you know, 1, 2, 3, and 4, as well as 0. 0 is Alfred House, which is something completely new to the school. It was a residential house that was actually purchased and converted to a commercial title. It's going to be used as kind of an infirmary for the infants and literally babies for the parents that are going to be sending these kids to school here for literally their entire lives. So up until they go to high school. And so then we had package 1B and 1C. We were also working on 1B a little bit, but that's kind of just the alley and site around the stuff, underground water, electrical stuff, vaults, that kind of thing. Package 1C was this big La Cienega building. So this is the La Cienega building. It's this huge structure right here. And this is actually a construction office we work out of. And that was the big scope that we were working on. It was a $20 million building just in itself. So that was a third, roughly, of the total budget for the project. Something interesting about this project that you don't really see a lot was the way it was actually set up. The architects had issues getting permits for package 3 and 4, and actually also 2. So when we started the project, we didn't have permits for the last 3 packages. We only had it for package 1. And Alfred House, we didn't even own yet at that point, and that was completely added on recently. And so the way we did it is we started it as just the La Cienega building, and everything, package 2, package 3, package 4, they are all just change orders, really. So the whole budget and everything, the whole billing cycle goes in as a change order. So it's kind of interesting. I got to be in the office when my boss was writing a $20 million change order on a $60 million project, just because we were getting ready to go into the next phase and all the permits were approved. Interesting way to lay out a project, for sure. So some of the significance and challenges, going over these with the project, is the significance of it is when you're in Los Angeles, you have a very diverse, especially economically, group of people that you're working with, right? You have, you know, very low poverty in LA, and you also have some of the wealthiest people in the United States and in the world living there. So you need to make sure that everything in the city caters to that whole audience. It's a huge audience. So this school was the higher-rise school. It is a private school, and it is very, very high security. Part of the reason you see that I have no pictures in here is we weren't supposed to take pictures with anything but our work phones. That wasn't supposed to leak. So I don't have any pictures of this job on my personal phone. But I do have 2 pictures in this presentation. Thank you to Brandon off your Twitter. And so this school was designed to, and the whole idea of it is to get a good education for these kids when they're at a young age, and to provide sufficient security for these high-profile kids. For example, I saw Will Ferrell and Beyonce both on this project, actually both in the first week. It was interesting. So very high-profile people, they don't want you taking pictures of their kids while you're inside on the job site. Not many people are allowed in here. So also we had to deal with the neighbors in the city of WeHo, West Hollywood. The neighbors were all right, some of them, not as all right others. I'm sure that's no different than anyone else who's working in a city type environment. The quarters in LA, especially WeHo, are super, super tight. You can see that there's literally about 6 inches of a gap in between the edge of the La Cienega building and what used to be the French King's antique store. It's literally that much. That's how much space we're looking at between these buildings. So everything is super tight. We don't have a lot of room to store materials and things. So it's just something we got to be careful of. And it was difficult to work around. There were power lines really close. Actually, they ran, you can't see them on the rendering, of course, because that would throw it off. They ran right here. So Brandon got a good opportunity to see this when he visited, but it was super close to the high roof, about 6 feet away. So we had to shut down those power lines anytime we wanted to work up there, and also do the work at night. And it was $5,000 to shut down the power lines, thanks to SoCal Edison. So, and of course the engineering challenges, we'll get into those, but for example, one example right here is this overhanging leaf that you can see of circling with the mouse. And what that is that is a beam that was on top of suspending the concrete slab down there. So that was an interesting engineering challenge that we got to overcome, and I think my whole team learned a lot from it, and we definitely grew as professionals. Here's another engineering challenge that Brandon just happened to have a picture of. So this was a walkway connection, and that is the existing building, which is over here, and we're standing on the edge of the La Cienega building that we were working on, and this is connecting the two buildings. We did notice that, or actually I should say, our general foreman for the steel contractor noticed that he thought it was really weak, the way the structure was and the material that we had, and thankfully he said something, and we believe that if he would have not, and if it would have not been re-engineered, that it would have likely collapsed. So that's another lesson that we learned. Listen to your foreman. As someone else said, some of them don't go to, most of them don't go to college, and some of them don't even finish high school, but there is something to be said for 30 years of experience. That is a lot of knowledge and a lot of things that they've seen, and they do know what they're doing. So listen to them when they say things like that. So my first impressions on this project were, I came in and the management team was really behind. Schedule-wise, we weren't. Work-wise, we weren't. But the management team was super behind. I mean, the project engineer had just piles of samples that had not been submitted and had been sitting on his desk for months. And I mean, the RFIs were just a huge line. I mean, 20, 30 RFIs behind constantly. So that was a huge problem that I noticed. And the reason was because the whole management staff was 3 people: superintendent, project engineer, and a senior project manager for this large project with all of the logistical issues. So that's I kind of got thrown into the fire immediately, but I helped the team catch up a little bit, and once we were able to catch up, everything was much smoother and much easier to focus on. So my role was, like I said, getting caught up and then processing the submittals, sending out the RFIs. Once we get it back, posting the RFIs, sending out the submittals back, just distribution, and posting everything. I had to pull permits, of course, for all this stuff, building permits, canopy permits, everything, all the permits. We also got a new project engineer, so that was interesting. I got to actually train the full-time project engineer as just an intern, so that was a interesting thing that I got to do. Also, every other week we got to have a staff meeting report, so Brad got to do one of those as well. So I got to do that every other week, though. Brad only had to do one. So my accomplishments were, I unofficially won a staff meeting competition. Unfortunately, I was disqualified, but that was for something that was on my superintendent side that I didn't even know was a factor in me being disqualified. So that was unfortunate because I really wanted to win, but it is what it is. I'll win outright next summer. That's not an issue. I was assigned a subcontractor that was a little bit problematic, especially with the submittals and the samples. He was never on time, never correct, and our management team had just had enough of him, brushed him onto my desk, and thankfully I was actually able to get him straightened out. I learned a lot of lessons. It's really good to empower people when you're trying to get them to do something you want to do. If you're just constantly hounding them and making them feel inferior to you, they're not going to really be inclined to do what you want them to do. So I've learned a huge lesson off of that. And I was also able to make at least a positive enough impression on my team to be invited back next year. So my departing thoughts were way better than when I arrived. The project was totally caught up, everything was good, everything was clean, the job site was clean when you walked onto the job site on any floor you were on. And I learned a ton. I had to do safety, a safety observation every week, so I learned a ton about safety and OSHA stuff. And I learned about management techniques from that subcontractor. I learned about scheduling. Even though I didn't really do any scheduling, I had plenty of time to sit down and talk with my SPM about it, and he gave me a ton of insight on, for when I'm ready to start doing that stuff. And just logistical planning around WeHo City, around SoCal Edison, and working with all these different entities that didn't really want to work with us, that didn't have to work with us, and getting them to work with us and do all the things that we needed them to do. So that is all I have now for today. So are there any questions? This is the second picture. Any questions? Nope. Frank? Good.
I think the disadvantage is that I was there.
Oh, true.
Yeah, so I can't pick you apart.
Alrighty.
Thank you.
That's all I have. Thank you.
Floor drains.
So hi guys, I'm Verna. I'm going to talk about my summer 2017 internship. I interned for MR. They're residential developers. So basically there's a client. I know many of you haven't heard about them before, but one of their very famous projects that they did is Burj Khalifa in Dubai. So I'm sure everyone knows that. So I've worked on one of their projects in Egypt. It's called Uptown Cairo. It's a residential development. It was 200 meters above sea level, so it was placed on a mountain actually, so you can see the whole Cairo from above, as you can see here from the picture. The total cost of the project was more than $100 billion. It's like a small city, so it's huge. The development was more than 1,000 acres. Here are some types of the property types that were inside the development. So we had apartments, duplexes, townhouses, villas. We had everything, even commercial buildings like restaurants, shopping, malls, everything. So this is the master plan for the whole project. As you can see, it's divided into areas. So each area had a different contractor. So the whole project had like hundreds of subcontractors. But the thing that they all had in common that they were all managed by the same construction management firm, which was Turner. So next, they need me. So next, I'm gonna talk about my goals before the internship. So I really wanted to go on site and learn about the procedures and the durations of the activities, because before that I've never been on site and I never knew what the actual things that were happening on the actual field were. Next, I really wanted to know the interactions between the all different parties of the construction in the construction industry. So I want to know what was the role of the construction management firm and what was the role of the owner there, and what was the role of the contractors, and how they all communicated together to get that deliver the project that we had. And that thing, and the next goal, I wanted to know what I needed to develop in my personality for me to be a good project manager leader in the future. And finally, I wanted to know more about planning and project control, because that's what I want to do when I graduate. So next is what I did. here's like a summary of what I did. Basically, they made me go through all of the departments so I can figure out what I want to do when I graduate. So they made me go through every department they had. Even they made me go work for the construction management firm for some time, and then they made me go work for the contractor firms there for some time. So I'm gonna start by the project control department and MR, what I did with them. So first of all, this was the hardest thing that I had to do there. I had to make a report and a presentation about the economic decisions and the impact of it on construction industry in Egypt. So the decisions were the flotation of the Egyptian currency and the unsubsidizing fuel and electricity prices. I know that these are hard economic terms to understand, so I had to read a lot of newspapers articles to understand these terms and find out their impact on the construction industry. Finally, I found out that because of these decisions, the construction cost rose by more than 100%. It was doubled, actually. So they made me, after that, go through their contracts and learn who's gonna be responsible for that increase in cost. So I had to go through all of the contracts of the contractors and find out who's gonna be blamed for that increase in cost. Next, I did some planning. So this, I was given the reports of the construction management firm. So Turner gave me their progress reports, and then I had to update our progress reports. And from that, I had to issue the interim payment certificates. And as you can see here, of course, we all know about these things because we're taking it with the Professor Wagner right now in our 301 course. So here's like some examples of the things that I did and the cash flows that I generated. Here's the interim payment certificate picture on the left. Next, I went to work with the QA and QC department. So first, they made me go through interior finishes for the apartments, actually. So I had to go through the insulation for the terraces and the roofs. Here, we had to put the mortar and then put the rubber foam and make sure that there's no leakage. So we had to test this. We put water on it and we had to wait for 24 hours and see if the water was there the next morning, then there's no leakage and it was done perfectly. And if there was water, then we had to redo it again and remove all of this. This was actually interesting because how we stick it was with fire. So we got fire and then we melt the rubber down and then we stick it. And we had to make sure that there were no cuts in the rubber foam or there were no any air voids inside. So also for the interior finishes, I got to see the MFP where if they were placed according to the shop drawing and the door frames and the kitchen cabinets. I don't have a picture for the kitchen cabinets, but here are the door frames, they were missing, so we had to make sure that they already installed them before we did the punch list things. And then we also had to make sure that they were according to the plans before we installed the full ceiling. Next, I went to the QA and QC for the infrastructure. So here we had to make sure that all the manholes, they delivered water. So we put water and then we had to make sure that they run through pipes and we would stand there and watch the water delivered to the manhole. This is a handhole, so the difference between these two, one is for the water and the handhole is for the electricity. So I wanted to show you the difference between these two. Next, this was like an interesting building they had on the side, so they made us go and see it. It's a control building, so what it does, it's downsize the voltage that's coming from the power station, and then it delivers it to the whole development. So here's the footing. They wanted to show us the difference between the types of the footing. So this was like the footing stage. So the type of footing they used was isolation footing, not a combined one. Actually, I learned that it is much cheaper than the combined one. And then here, the thing is that was interesting that they were building firewalls because it's an electrical building. So they had to make sure that the fire won't pass from one side to the other. So they also showed us how they build the firewall how they built the firewalls and how they made sure that it did not like it did not break, and they have these holes in the firewalls. They added like white cloth inside the firewalls, so the firewalls won't like absorb water from the ground. So that was something that I found interesting, a new method for curing the firewalls they did. And the thing is, this was the highlight for them, like for my internship. So they made me go through a 14-hour meeting. So it was basically between the construction management firm Turner, project managers for each area, and also the project director of Uptown from our side, and also the project managers of each area from our side. So it was a progress meeting. They had the distributed papers, which was called meeting minutes. They stated the issues that they're gonna tackle in that meeting before they got together. And so this meeting like really taught me a lot. The first thing was that I got to saw different project manager personalities, because we had different areas. So I saw like different project managers and different personalities. I got to know who's better and who's worse, why he's doing like that, and why is that one acting like that. And another thing I learned, that I always have to take notes. One of the things that I saw was that there was a huge issue in the project, but they did not mention it in the meeting minutes. But the project director, because he was so smart, he knew about that issue, and he was like, where's that issue? Why did not you talk about it, and why is it not in the meeting minutes? And then they were like, oh, we thought like we already talked about it before. And he was like, no, I want to know the progress. This is a progress meeting, so I really want to know about it. So when I went to my supervisors and asked them, well, how did he know about these issues that he did not, like, that they did not put in the meeting minutes, they were like, he always takes notes, and he clearly like remembers and revises everything before each meeting. And one of the very funny things that I also saw, and I learned, that you have to be friends with the workers there so they can respect you and treat you better. When we were going through the interior finishes, when the QC was going, he was carrying a pencil, and he would go like on the walls, and he would like mark the things that he wanted the workers to change. So he would go like, for example, like this, and he would tell them, I need this part to be changed. So whenever he turned his back around, he'll go like this, and they'll erase it. And when he comes back, he'll be like, where's the mark that I did? They'll be like, you did not do anything. We never saw anything, so they did not change anything. So when I went back to my supervisors and asked them, they were like, you have to be friends, you have to like make friendship with them so they can respect you, and they won't do that if you make friendship with them. And that's everything I learned. So any questions? Yeah.
So you said this was $100 billion and they're general contractors. For your specific section of work, was it done in phases, or is it just being done
All at once.
Oh wow. What's
Yeah.
the completion date for it?
There's no completion date, because we had like, it was supposed to like start 2010, and then there was the Egyptian revolution, so that delayed everything. And now the economic changes, it's supposed also to delay the construction work, so it's gonna take like maybe more than, I don't know, maybe 5-6 more than like it was supposed to finish. For example, 2019, it's gonna have like 7 more years. Yeah.
So is this just like a huge empty space on the side of a mountain, or did you guys like demo something first?
No, it's all a huge space on the side of the mountain. There, yeah. But there, like, part of the mountain is currently like it's like there's people living there on the other part of the mountain. But then they took this part that was empty and they made this huge city. Because they wanted to go out from the pollution, and they wanted to go out from the because Cairo right now is so crowded, so they wanted to go out from it. So they also made like two new exits for it, like from the mountain, so people can go anywhere reach anywhere in Cairo.
Okay.
Good job.